Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the webinar, Refugee Upskilling with Mobile Learning Circles, WhatsApp, and Learning Upgrade. Today we have our partners at Learning Upgrade. We have Drew Robinson and Haneen Khalif. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us and enjoy the session. Drew?
All right, thank you, Bethel, and thank you everyone for joining today. I'll be doing a brief introduction here, but the focus is really going to be on getting deep into what are learning circles, how do we get them set up in person or completely virtual, and then we'll be doing live demos. And so you'll see here a QR code on the screen. You can do it now, or there'll be in about 20 or 30 minutes an opportunity to scan a QR code or click a link, and we'll actually be doing a live demo of WhatsApp Learning Circles. So for those of you that have a smartphone, if you're on a laptop, desktop, or second device, you can just take your phone, open up the camera app, and when the camera lens views the QR code, you'll see a little link, you'll click it, and that'll open up WhatsApp on your phone, and you'll be thrown right into the learning circle. So I'll be showing you how easy that is. For those of you that don't have WhatsApp downloaded, now would be a good time to download it on a smartphone or tablet, and then you'll be able to participate in that live component of our presentation. So my name's Drew. Vinod was not able to join us today. He's going to be attending an event elsewhere, but I'm joined by my incredible colleague, Haneen, and she will be able to answer your questions. So if you do have any questions that pop up, our preferred way for you to do that is to use the Q&A. Viewing the chat, a lot of chats can come in and it's difficult for us to keep track of those. So just make sure to use the Q&A, and that way we'll be able to address your questions as they come in. And then if we see anything where there's either a repeat question or something that many people have, then we'll be able to address those live. And I see that David has his hand raised. So that's another good way, is you can raise your hand and then put something into the Q&A or the chat. We're not going to have attendees unmute themselves today, so just make sure that you use the Q&A. So thanks for using that, David, as a little demo for others. But again, use the Q&A and we'll be able to answer your questions there. So a brief overview, we'll be getting into an introduction on Learning Upgrade. For those of you that have never used Learning Upgrade before, or you never heard of us before, we'll just be doing a brief intro there. But the primary focus today is to hear from refugees, to hear from refugee centers, adult schools, and we'll be showing you some case studies on programs that are currently using the model that we'll be deploying today in our session as a demo, and most importantly, how you can bring what they've developed, what they've learned to your programs. Then we'll talk about the apps. That's the Learning Upgrade app that they're using, and the learning management system that is built on top of that to track and monitor student progress. And that'll also help you get students onboarded and assist in creating these learning circles. Then we'll get into deployment models. And so this will be one of the more important ones for all of you attending today. Learning circles on WhatsApp are very flexible. The Learning Upgrade learning management system is flexible. And so it's important that we hear from you in the Q&A and in the chat how you're planning to deploy it, and then we'll be able to give some best practices based on that. There are 2 or 3 standard models, though, that almost all of our programs use, and we'll be going into detail on how that's done. And then finally, getting started. So everyone attending today, you'll get all of the training on how to get started with WhatsApp Learning Circles, but you'll also get a free Learning Upgrade pilot. And so usually we run those 3-month sessions, but since we're in the holiday season coming up for the end for November and December, we know a lot of programs don't like to start pilots so late. And so we're actually doing an extended pilot for those that are in attendance today. It's not for anyone else, just for those attending the session today, and it'll go through March 31st. So you'll get an extended time period to demo Learning Upgrade, completely free, as well as all of the WhatsApp Learning Circle model materials. And so Haneen will be placing a link in the chat. You'll just get a landing page, you'll fill out a form, and then we'll be able to get that processed for you and get you set up. So that's everything on the overview. Now we'll just get into learning upgrades. So again, for those of you that aren't familiar, we'll do a brief intro. And at our core, our focus is on life-changing education for all. And so we've served about 3.5 million students now, and we do that with our breakthrough app. And so we teach English, math, and job skills. English, that's going to be all the way from pre-literate NRS 1, first exposure to formal English education, all the way up to NRS 5. And we do that across 60 lesson courses. And that'll be included in the Learning Upgrade app that all of your programs will have access to. Math, we go from introduction on basic numeracy all the way up through algebra. We do have HSE for both. And so we have our GED prep for math and for English. And then on the job skill side, we teach financial literacy. We have digital literacy. We have our new soft skills course, which we call work life skills. And then our latest one is citizenship. So for those of you that are in ESL programs with your refugees and you have refugees that are pursuing naturalization, you'll know that the citizenship test is going to be changing for next year. And so our new course is built around the new format of the test. So the two big changes for those of you that are in those citizenship programs, the first one is going to be the interview process. So before, when they would sit with an officer, questions would be sourced from the application, and it's going to be different. Now the naturalization process will have picture cards. They'll be shown an object, a process, something that they're not already familiar with, and they'll be asked to describe that to the naturalization interview officer. Then the second big change is the civics component is going to be moving away from interview to multiple choice. And so instead of having the officer ask them a question, name a war from the 18th century, they're going to be getting multiple choice. So they'll have to know more based on the multiple choice format, and Learning Upgrade is set up perfectly for that with the new course. But everything is included with our breakthrough app. We teach using songs, video, and games. So we do the songs and video for engagement, and then we have the gamification to drive that binge learning, make things fun, and have the students learning late into the night. The learning management system, here we have real-time tracking, growth reports, integration with Power BI, but most importantly, it allows you to scale up your resources and have less time taken out of your day. So most of our teachers, coordinators, directors, they're familiar with learning management systems. They're going to get up and running. It's very similar to a Google Classroom environment. But what we'll see with a lot of our programs working with refugees is they rely on volunteers, some non-credentialed instruction, and assistance outside of the traditional pathways of adult ed. And in these cases, they can rely on volunteers and they can manage loads of 1 to 50. And so for those of you that do rely on volunteers to help serve a large number of refugees, our learning management system works well there as well. So from volunteers all the way up to highly skilled tech coordinators at your site, we'll be able to provide them with access to get up and running. And then, as I mentioned, free to start and very affordable to grow. The affordability is really key for a lot of programs. And we're seeing at the minimum, they're able to scale up and do 10x for the number of individuals that they serve. So as I mentioned, we're over 3.5 million students now. We're the grand prize winners of the Adult Literacy X Prize. This was the largest field test ever done in adult education for ESL instruction. 12,000 student field test, and Learning Upgrade was the app. They used CASAS as the pre and post test that had the largest CASAS gains for the students in that field test. Fantastic solution for all ages. So we have our traditional adult ed students, but we also work in libraries where they have individuals in their 60s and 70s who don't have a ton of technical savvy, technical know-how, maybe their first exposure to learning on a smartphone. They love Learning Upgrade. And then we also have a large component of K-12 students that are using Learning Upgrade to get themselves up to grade level. Unlike traditional, standalone language acquisition programs, great apps like Duolingo, Rosetta Stone, Babbel, those are fantastic for learning vocabulary, improving your, travel knowledge, phrases, and getting started with a language. But they won't, provide students a pathway for standards-based instruction. And so with Learning Upgrade being aligned to CCRS, CASAS, Common Core, they're going to get an education that maps up to federal standards. All of our courses are included, as I mentioned, and we also have very quick and easy student onboarding. And so we do onboarding pretty straightforward with spreadsheets, or we can have students self-enroll, and we'll go over that later on how you get started. And then we can do push notifications via text message, WhatsApp, email, or if you'd like to just print out their credentials, we also have that option available. And all of that is localized in the individual's first language. So here's a look at our deployments. It's going to be very US focused today for COABE. Almost all of our attendees today will be dialing in from the US somewhere. But for those of you that do work with, primarily refugees, we'll be able to take a lot of our learning that we've done outside of the US and how we've been able to scale up and teach thousands of refugees remotely. And so, we'll be going over one of our deployments where we started out small, about 100, then 800, and now we're serving 6,500 Afghan refugees in 12 different countries with partners in Canada. And so for those of you that do want to work more in a remote setting, or you just want to scale up and serve more refugees in your community, I can show you some best practices on how to do that. So before we get into our deployment learning circles, I just want to talk about what's possible. And that way you can hear from a student and then also from an instructor at a refugee-led program. So here we have Studio, was a new arrival to the country, came to the States with 7 kids. And so, 7 kids, even in the best case scenario, is a massive challenge. But 7 kids, when you come as a refugee, new school, new language, new customs, everything is brand new. It's a real challenge. And so Studio came to a learning center, UMI Learning Center, to help her kids with English primarily. They were struggling to learn English at the program. They were struggling in math. And so they got the kids started with Learning Upgrade, but then Studio got started with Learning Upgrade as well. And that's when her learning journey just became one of these stories that was incredible for us to see, incredible for the program, and really highlights what's possible when you get into a peer-led learning circle with a tool like Learning Upgrade. And so she started out with our assessment tool and was placed at the very beginning for both English and math. So basic, starting out with the alphabet, and then for math, starting out with basic number line, 1 through 10. And in 18 months, she went through almost everything we have in Learning Upgrade and logged over 150 hours in the app, which might sound like a lot when you say 150 hours, 200 hours, that's quite a bit of time. But a lot of our students, they try to average about an hour a day. And so when you're doing an hour a day, you'll see 100, 200 hours in a year for a lot of our students is not really all that uncommon. But by doing that, she was able to do in 18 months what would have taken over 5 years in traditional adulthood, especially with 7 kids trying to manage transportation, school schedules, getting work done, projects. She was able to work on Learning Upgrade from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. And now she's taking credit-bearing courses at a local community college. And so this is something that we've been able to do, for thousands of learners now. And it'll be something that you'll be able to provide to all of your learners going forward after this webinar. So before we get into our deployment models, I have a couple videos here that are pretty short, and that way you can hear from an instructor, and then you will also hear from a student that was using the Learning Upgrade program with in-person learning circles at their site.
Hello, my name is Shadia Mahmoud. I teach ESL here at UMI Learning Center. What's very amazing about this program is it really helps them love to learn. It just makes it fun and just more enjoyable. I think it's a great addition to add into our program. We have seen tremendous improvements. They started from basically doing the alphabets to now where they're reading paragraphs and reading sentence and completed sentence. So that's pretty amazing. Hello.
Hi, my name is Sabiba Jama. I'm here at UMI Learning Center, and I increase a lot of learning things in Learning Upgrade. somehow learning upgrade is the best thing that I should recommend for the people, for the moms outside. And I would recommend people that they should go, and it's just like easy things to do, and you can do whenever you have a free time. And you can do like when you are in the hospital waiting the doctor, or you can do when you are waiting the cashier at the Walmart or anywhere you are. Or if you're washing a clothes at the laundry, you can do it whenever you have a free time. It's easy and it's understandable, and somehow it will tell you all the vocabularies and something like new words that you don't understand and the word that you can't even pronounce. It will help you to pronounce, and it will help you to spell right. And it's good. I like learning upgrade, and I also do every single day. Even like 5 minutes, I like to do it. Before I used to play video game, but now my video game is learning upgrade. And I can read right now, and before I wasn't understanding the new words and pronunciation, but whenever it pronounced me, I like it. And also, I was weak with math. 1 + 1 is, kindergarten can do it, but I wasn't doing it. Right now I can do up to 10. So that helped me a lot. I like it, and I should recommend a lot people for. So that's why I like it. And I am in math right now. It's course 2, which is I finished course 1. I get silver certificate, which I'm proud of myself. And also I did English, and now I'm doing English 2, which I finished it. I have 1 bronze certificate, and I am so proud of myself. I should recommend a lot.
All right, so there you got to hear from an instructor at UMI Learning Center, and then one of the students that went through the program. And then the last case study we'll talk about is our largest refugee deployment to date. And so our pilot here is with Focus Humanitarian Assistance, which is underneath the Greater Aga Khan Foundation Development Network. And this is an all-volunteer run organization that's based in Toronto. And so they reached out to us during COVID. Taliban had taken back over, and they were working with thousands of displaced refugees. And their traditional means of providing support, especially in education, had been greatly disrupted by their inability to travel to the locations that the refugees were being housed. And so they reached out to us and said, listen, we need to provide a scalable and affordable education solution, and we have a massive need. And so this is really what started the topic of today's webinar is how do we deliver not only instruction via smartphones, but also community, classroom environment, the ability to help each other, and then make it circular. So those that start out at the very beginning can mentor and have essentially what we consider a refugee-led learning circle or a refugee-led mini organization, and they can help each other. And so that's what we'll talk about briefly here with Focus. So as I mentioned, our complete work with them was COVID period, maximum difficulty, and we translated all of our documentation into Dari essentially on the fly in about a week, translated videos, onboarding PDFs. And so all of you will have access to that, and as well as I think we have 8 languages now, and we're working on a few more. But the way this one worked is we sent out a message on WhatsApp to our pilot group, and that was about 80 students. And those 80 students forwarded to their friends, their family, their colleagues. And before we knew it, we had an 800 student pilot, which scared us just because, I'm in Southern California. They were in Toronto and Vancouver, and yet all of our students were in Turkey. That group from 800 in 6 months grew to 2,000. And before we knew it, they had completed 348,000 lessons and had logged 44,000 hours on the Learning Upgrade app. But most importantly, and you heard it from Habiba Jama from UMI Learning Center, is the importance of certificates. And so every single Learning Upgrade course is 60 lessons. They take an average of 25 hours to complete. And you'll see that 12,000 were earned at the Focus Humanitarian Assistance Network of refugee sites. And so that was important for us. The more important thing that we were able to do, though, is actually drive growth. And so this is massive for the overall AKDN, so the Aga Khan Development Network, is they have incredible vocational training and job skills training and getting refugees placed into professions once they're up to a certain level of English proficiency. And so that pipeline is what got disrupted during COVID times because they weren't able to create classrooms and have tutors and teachers on site. The number of refugees that were qualified for the vocational training had essentially just fallen off a cliff. So you'll see here from our first cohort of refugees, we started out with 800. They use CEFR, the Common European Framework, which is a Cambridge English scale. You'll see here the alignment, so for CASAS and our NRS ESL. But as to be expected from the 800, 92% pre-literate, no formal English education. They're going to be in this pre-A1 or our NRS ESL1, CASAS of 180 or lower. After 6 months in learning upgrade, you'll see that group is now down to 16%. And that 16% is mostly students who just didn't use the app. No fault of their own. Refugees have a lot going on, larger families, moving, trying to find shelter, trying to find jobs. And so that group just wasn't able to get started. But for those that did start, you'll see, most importantly for proficient, our C1 and C2, we have a large group here at 21.5% for our C1. And then for our independent, that's when they're beginning to qualify for vocational training. We're getting almost half of our students now in these higher levels. And that's critical, not just for refugees looking for vocational training, but for traditional adult ed pathways as well, to accelerate them towards HSE, job training, and making sure that we're not taking multiple years to provide them these pathways. And so with Learning Upgrade, again, this was done in a 6-month period. And one of the major reasons we went from serving 800 refugees with this organization up to now 6,500 in those multiple countries. So now that we've talked about Learning Upgrade at the smaller site level at UMI Learning Center, and you got to hear from an instructor and one of the students, and then what it looks like is at a very large organization serving refugees globally, what's the app that they're using? So we'll cover this briefly, and then we'll get into the learning circles and how you can deploy this at your site. So, Learning Upgrade, the app, you'll see here the English courses I talked about. We have our 6 current ones, and that'll take them from basic all the way up to NRS 5. We do have our newest higher level course coming out, English Upgrade 6 next year. And that's been a huge demand, but from our refugee groups and adult ed, everybody wanted the next course. So that'll be available to all of our existing users, but also for those that have been waiting for that. Then we also have math from basic all the way through algebra. Again, every one of these is a 60 lesson course. The first time students log in, they're not actually going to see any of these courses though. It'll just say English placement and math placement, and the app is going to assess the learner when they take that placement test. For those that use Learning Upgrade in the past, our old assessment would just directly enroll students into a course and they would be off and running. Our goal has always been to have the smallest amount of time required to get students learning. So they take the assessment, they get enrolled in the course, and then they're off and running. What we added recently is more detailed assessment reporting. So now when the students take their placement test, in the LMS, you'll get sub-area breakdowns. And so it actually works like a real assessment that other programs aren't going to provide you with. And so, we'll get the assessment based on the placement. The student won't notice anything. They'll get directly enrolled in a course and begin their learning journey. And as an instructor, you'll be able to see exactly how they did on that placement test, and then how they continue their journey. And then most importantly, how are they improving across those learning domains over time. We also have the skills courses. Again, these are going to be digital, work life, financial, and citizenship. And then we have our test prep. So for those that do need the language proficiency, TOEFL and IELTS, once they finish our English Upgrade 5, they can jump into there. Now, for every single one of our courses, we're recording over 10,000 pieces of audio, and that's to give the learners instant feedback and remediation. In most cases, they're not working with a tutor or teacher in real time. As we mentioned, they're going to be taking these lessons. It's self-paced, and they're going to be 10 p.m., 1 a.m., maybe early in the morning when their kids are, about to be picked up from school, waiting at the doctor's office. So if they do get something incorrect, the built-in feedback and remediation will walk them through exactly how to answer the questions correctly, even when the instructor is not there. For those that are interested in full lesson lists, we do have these PDFs. And so you can just go to learningupgrade.com, click on courses in our main menu. And on the courses page, we have full lesson lists. We also have our alignments. So if you want to see for the college and career readiness, CEFR, for those of you that are interested in that international standard, CASAS correlations, our ESL and ABE alignments, essentially anything you want we'll have on there. And then we can also share those if you want to pop questions into the Q&A. At the core though, it's high engagement with bite-sized lessons that drive the binge learning. And so the psychology here is very similar to other social media platforms that all of us use on a daily basis. And so whether it's Instagram stories, TikTok videos, YouTube shorts, everything now is built out around this centerpiece, which is bite-sized content. It's not giving a student a 200-page black and white PDF and asking them to do evening readings, taking home a workbook that they can't, see at night, they can't really take with them everywhere. Our goal is to provide the instruction in bite-sized format. So our lessons aren't going to be super short like an Instagram story, but they will be in that 90 to 2-minute marker. So we want it to be 90 seconds to 120 seconds. Then we're going to do the same instruction in the form of a song. And then comes the gamification, where they're answering questions in a fun way, taking what they learned and putting it to use with practical real-world application. That's going to drive the binge learning, and that's what eventually will lead to the accelerated growth. And here's a quick look at what that'll look like. So you can see how our instruction comes to life. We have color, we have animation, we have narration, and then we'll have the music on top of that. And so we can take the ribbon on documents when they're working through Microsoft Word and Google Docs, quadratic formula. At the bottom right here, we're going to be doing volume of a rectangular prism. So we can actually show them the prism. We'll put the unit cubes in there. We're going to work through the formula, drag and drop our numbers here. Everything's in green. And then once we click go, instantly in red, we're going to see what we got incorrect. The narration comes on. It'll walk the student through exactly why it was incorrect. Then they're going to see the formula. The narrator, again, will walk them through how to answer it correctly. And then unlike a workbook, we can scale it back, give them something easier, build up their skills until they can answer a question like this on the second or third pass through. So with that, I'll play one more video. This one's from our partners at Somali Bantu Association, and then we'll get into a live demo on learning circles.
I run the Somali Bantu Association of America. We have over 12 computers right now running, and we get today a new donation coming for 5 computers to make it up to numbers for 40 people to be available to use. The learning upgrade program, it changes a lot. Now a lot of people getting airport work, some they're getting in Hilton work because of the program help them how to speak and how to talk and how to communicate and everything.
They're doing cool programs here, learning upgrade, where they learn math, English, science, writing, and all like the cool projects for them to get prepared for high school diploma or GED.
I come here every day and use my software for the learning upgrade to improve my English level.
My goal is I want to learn English, improve my English. That's why I can reach my goal to get a better job.
And my future in San Diego is to get a more education and for my kids, for our kids, and learning program, and to enjoy this program, and to buy a house, and to stay with our kids and stay out of the trouble.
What's happened here is that between the tutor, Medina, and this lab full of computers, they've been able to make some magic happen, which is basically to get adults who basically cannot even read a word of English to where you have literate adults who are reading and writing and speaking.
When we came here, it's a lot of change for us. Like we have a freedom of driving. I wasn't expecting myself that I'll be having a car and I will be running this big office and helping refugees. I wasn't expecting. It's just my dream thoughts. But now my dream come true.
Okay, so that was a look from the Somali Bantu Association. And as far as expectations on students, when do you start to see growth? How do you see growth? What do we set for our benchmarks and guidelines? So when we start out, our minimums, we say, hey, let's get an hour a week. If we can get 60 to 90 minutes a week, that's when you're going to start to see that growth accelerate. But with programs like, Focus Humanitarian Assistance and UMI Learning Center, they set higher goals. So they want 2 to 4 hours a week. That tends to be with programs that aren't traditional adult ed. So we find if you're going to be in traditional adult ed with in-class instruction and assignments and homework and projects, an hour of learning upgrade is the perfect supplement to accelerate growth there. For those of you that might be in programs where your learners aren't in formal education quite yet, or they're just getting started, or maybe this is a transition program where they're hopefully going to be attending classes in the future, but they want to accelerate their English growth in the short term, then we might want to set a higher goal like 2 or 4 hours a week and get them through multiple courses so that they can accelerate their journey to full proficiency. And then here's a look at the full learning upgrade track and why it's important. So we have a lot of data from State Department, USAID, that track income as individuals improve their English literacy here in the States, what kind of jobs they have, long-term job growth, job stability. And we see that as they go from their beginner, so pre-literate, up to full proficiency, what that does to earnings. And then once they get to their English proficiency and they can take credit-bearing courses, what that looks like. And then you'll see we instantly jump to Math 5 here. And the reason for that is a lot of the times from our internal data and then some work we did with San Diego State is that a lot of the students actually have pretty high levels of math proficiency when we compare it to the English, but the higher level math requires English in order to get started. And so that's when you start getting into word problems, multi-step problems, a lot more context required to answer your math questions. And so we tend to find that if they can accelerate their English growth, that's when they can jump into math, and they don't actually need the beginner math. It was just English that was holding them back. Then they can get into our pre-algebra, algebra, high school equivalency. And then for long-term success in jobs, we have our digital literacy, 60-lesson course matched up to the DQ standards, as well as North Star and ISTE. We have our work-life skills that'll prepare them for interview techniques, showing up on time, punctuality, everything required to be successful in the workplace of today. And then now they're earning money, maybe for the first time, maybe this is an increase in their earnings, increase in household earnings. And so we want to make sure that they're not going to fall prey of the multiple predatory practices, especially here in the United States, for our low-income learners, for our new arrivals, and for our refugees. High interest credit cards, managing their credit score, savings, budgeting, long-term investment. What does it look like to buy a house? We also have small business lessons on sales and marketing, ensuring that they understand the tax system and what the requirements are that are different, being an individual as opposed to being a small business owner if they want to go into business for themselves. So we have a lot of critical life lessons in that financial literacy. And again, this entire track is available in a single app. And then the one course that's not on here, but it is available to all of your learners, especially the refugees that are wanting to pursue naturalization, is once they get through all of this, we do have the citizenship course as well. And so you'll see if they were to go through everything that Learning Upgrade has to offer, they're going to be close to 350 to 400 hours of instruction time. But again, if we just break it down, we never try to mention that number. If they can just start with an hour a day, even if it's just 30 minutes a day, if they have goals to go through everything, we have quite a few students that have already done this. and they just break it down into small pieces. They set goals, and they can go as far as their time and their dreams take them. So that's everything that we wanted to cover on, the case studies. You got to hear from students, instructors, different sites, some of the data on, the X Prize field test with 12,000 students, the data on the refugees from Focus Humanitarian Assistance. And now we're going to get into the learning management system side and actually getting started with learning circles. So we're going to take a live look at these. But for those that aren't familiar with learning circles, I just wanted to throw out a definition so we can kind of, wrap our mind around the same idea here. And just in case we have different ideas of what this is, we can all be on the same page going forward. So we get this from David Rosen in Links. He's done a lot of fantastic research on learning circles. And so, for Links, a learning circle is going to be a group of learners sharing a common interest. And so in this case, it's going to be learning English, math, or job skills, or a goal for a lot of our learners. It's getting into adult school, community college, maybe pursuing naturalization. And they're going to meet regularly. So in person at learning centers, community centers, houses, parks, or in today's case, in a lot of cases, it's going to be on WhatsApp or iMessage or whatever your favorite chat app is. And they're going to learn from each other and from others about a topic. And these learning circles really help support blended learning across formats. And these learning circles are flexible, so individuals can opt in based on the time that works best for them. And that's why we find WhatsApp works a lot better than an hour in class time when not everybody can make it. They're going to be peer directed, so the students are the ones that are driving the conversations. And they're going to be built up upon the idea that every single member has something they can contribute and learn. And this is critical. You'll see so much of a change in the way your students interact in a classroom versus a learning circle. In the classroom, we're conditioned to sit, we listen, we pay attention to the instructor. When you're in the learning circle, it's a time to engage with your peers. You can help out with questions they have. You can celebrate success. You can have side conversations. So all of the things you're not doing in a classroom setting, you are doing in a learning circle. So when you think about setting up the learning circle, again, David Rosen has done some fantastic research here, and he's really dialed in on what he calls a high flex model. So you'll see here we have in-person instruction, traditional instruction, and that's usually going to be done in a synchronous setting. And so students are viewing you live in a classroom, or they're viewing you live on Zoom, like you're viewing me today in a synchronous setting, unless, of course, you're watching the recording of this, and then you're going to be over here in an asynchronous environment. And asynchronous means you're not watching it live in real time. We're not responding to your Q&A. This is going to be something you're engaging with after. And David has actually found that what works best for students is when they can allot their time for what works best across these three different groups. So in-person, online synchronous, and then online asynchronous. When students can allocate their time based on what works best, that's when we see their growth accelerate. And so what we're going to talk about today is how do you set up the learning circles? How do you align those with a program like Learning Upgrade? And then how do you get started? So, learning circles are hugely important, and we find this for our deployments. We work all across the world now. And so for deployments that we have in Kenya, Zambia, we have them in Uganda, we have them with students that are, forgotten youth in Rwanda. So, essentially no formal instruction, no classroom instruction. Talked about the refugees, new arrivals here in the States, and essentially anybody that wants access to education. We want to make sure that we can meet them in the middle sometimes, or maybe at the very beginning, not requiring them to find their way into a classroom with funding and transportation and some of the hurdles that we find there. And we do that with WhatsApp. And so for those of you that don't use WhatsApp or don't use it often, I want to do a demo for that now. And it's going to be built out around communities. And so if you take your phones out, or maybe you're already familiar with WhatsApp, you'll notice that everything is built out around chats. And so if you don't use WhatsApp regularly, chats are just like messages. And so if you use iMessage or your standard messaging app on an Android phone, you'll see all of your standard messages here. And those can be one-to-one. So if I'm going to send Haneen a message and it's just a chat between us, or you can do group messages where you have multiple people on your message, and then 5, 6, 10, 15 people will be responding in one chat. So what WhatsApp has is communities, and so you can think of this as a way to group your chats. So if you're a teacher and you have 5 different groups of students, you can have a group chat for one class and another. But what if you wanted to send a message to all 5 groups at once? And that's what communities is for. It's a way to group those. You can send announcements, and you can view each one of your chat groups as a learning circle. And that's how we'll set them up. And then we'll get going from there. So for those of you that didn't have a chance to scan the QR code at the very beginning, I'm looking on my phone and I see that actually quite a few of you did. But for those of you that didn't, maybe you didn't have WhatsApp downloaded, take the time to do that now. Again, all you need to do is you'll open up the phone, open up your phone, open up the camera, and with your camera, you'll scan the QR code. When you scan it with your camera, you should see a link. You'll click on that link and that'll open up our Learning Circle group. It'll throw you in there and it has a name for COABE Learning Circles. And then I'll be able to see all of you as you're joining there. So I'm going to just give you a couple extra seconds to do that. I'm seeing quite a few of you have joined. And then we also have a link. So if, a few of you might be joining on your mobile device, and in that case, you can't really scan. And so Haneen is going to add a link to the chat. And if you directly click that link, you'll be able to join as well. And so this will be the first step that you take. So for those of you wanting to set up a learning circle for your students, this is what you would do. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to open up my WhatsApp, and then we'll take a look at how you would do this in real time. So now we're over in WhatsApp. And you'll see that under communities, you'll create a new community. And so your new community can just be my Refugee Learning Circles. You can name it what your school is. So here you'll see I have 2 communities. I have Learning Upgrade community, and then I've created this LU Webinars community. And so every time I do a webinar on Learning Circles, I do a lot of in-person Learning Circle instruction as well. That's what I'll do is I'll create a new group under this community. So this community here is how I group all of these learning circles. And when I click view all, you'll see how many of these talks I've given, quite a few. And so every time I do a WhatsApp Learning Circles talk, again, I create a new group. So under this community, all I would do is click add group. But in this case, I've already done that. So COABE WhatsApp Learning Circle, and then you'll see here. So here we'll see everybody that's joined. And before we do anything, I just want to do some best practices. So the first thing you're going to do is click on the group name. What you can do here is change the group icon. So I always recommend changing the group icon because for most of us, when we open WhatsApp, we're visual and we want to see. So this one was job skills. If it's a conference, I'll actually take the logo of the conference. In this case, I have the Learning Upgrade logo, the WhatsApp logo, and the COABE logo. So all of you can identify that. Make sure that the name of the group is a name that everybody will identify. If I just name this Learning Circle, it wouldn't be as identifiable as having COABE WhatsApp in the title. So that's number 2. The third one that I'll want to show you is probably the most important. So under group settings, approve new participants, I always have that off because if you're scanning the QR code and I have that on, I have to go through one at a time and actually approve all of you to join. So if you're doing this with a group of refugees and you're going to have 50 to 100 people joining, it's usually nice to have that off. Now, for those of you that are going to create a QR code and you're going to put it on a bulletin board, or you're going to have it in a library or a computer lab, then you might actually want to have this on because you might actually want to vet and make sure that everybody joining is a part of your group. As opposed to where if I have 50 people in a room and I already know all 50 people, then I'm pretty safe in allowing everybody to just join without approval. You can also edit admins. So if you don't want to manage the load yourself, I make Haneen an admin. And so any other instructors that you would like to add on there, you can do that. I'm working with all adults here at COABE. So for send messages, I'm allowing all of you to type and say hello in our group. If you're working with younger students, you're working with refugees, that you might not know personally. Every now and again, you'll get 1 or 2 people that might abuse that freedom or that system. So you always have the ability to turn off, other individuals chatting in the group. You can make it a one-way street of communication. And it also helps if you're dealing with 300 or 400 people. Sometimes it just helps to keep things streamlined by turning off all participants, and then only admins will be the ones communicating. And so that just tends to help out on that side. So those are the best practices there. Again, once you create your group, add an image, give it a good name, go into settings and make sure that you either have the chat turned on or off, and then the approval turned on or off. Then you can also do this. So the way I created my QR code, you'll go to invite to group via link. And then here you'll see the link. So you can copy that by just doing copy link. And then what you can do is you can plug that into Zoom, or if you have like a learning management system at your school, you can send it that way. And then there's a bunch of different websites, and I'll be sharing the one I use in this learning circle, of course, that I use to create QR codes. And then you'll just take this link, they'll give you a QR code image, and then you can plug that into your slide deck like I did, and then everybody can scan it. Now, sometimes what I'll do is I'll do a group like this, and I don't want people using the link after. I only wanted the people that were in the live session, and then I'll create a different link afterwards. So if you don't want your link to be live anymore, you have the ability to reset the link, and then that'll take away the ability for anybody that passed the link on later to use it. So those are the best practices for getting the link started. What I can do now is I'll just say thanks for joining, and everybody will be able to get the message. So now that everybody's in my learning circle, what we want to do is start the students on their learning journey. And so in order to do that, we're going to switch our share, and we're going to go live to a browser. And so here we have the Learning Upgrade homepage. And so what you're going to be doing as instructors, all of you will either already have a pilot with us, or you'll be requesting one based on the link that Haneen shared earlier, and she'll be sharing it at the end as well. And so you'll log into the learning management system, pretty straightforward. All of you will log in as teachers to get started, but if you are admins, you can track multiple sites at once. We cover that in follow-up trainings. In our instructions, what we won't cover today, but we'll have all the documentation in the pilot, and we do follow-up trainings on how to onboard students. It's pretty straightforward. You'll do it with spreadsheets or an invite code, and then all of the students will be in your class. And then what we can do is we'll select all. Under perform action, we can send message. Here we're going to select our credentials. So in my case, I work a lot with the Afghan refugees for Dari. So now we see they have their onboarding message in Dari. For those that have email addresses, SMS, and WhatsApp numbers, I have all of that preloaded. Now I can hit send, and they will all have access to their information. It'll have username, password, school ID. And to show you how powerful and simple this is, we were able to do about 1,500 refugees living in Turkey in 20 minutes from me in Los Angeles, my colleagues at Focus Humanitarian in Toronto and Vancouver. We uploaded the spreadsheets that had the students' WhatsApp numbers. We sent out their messages in Dari like this. And then what we did is we tracked and monitored that they were logging in. So we see the date they were enrolled. We can see which ones have gotten started and played. And then we can see how they did on the assessments. And then as they progress through their courses, we track that. So in 20 minutes, we had all of that done. Everything was set up, perfect, ready to go. And then from there, we were able to get them in the learning circles and start building from there. So once the students get started, I know I went over that onboarding quickly, but again, follow-up trainings. And for those of you that do fill out the pilot form, you'll get documentation on that. We'll show you how to populate your class. Now, what do we do? And so step number one is, of course, to motivate and encourage the students. They're going to work through their courses. We also have our notebook. So if they want to print this out, or they can do it in a browser, they'll have the Learning Upgrade app. They'll fill out their notes. For the instructor, we have prompts. And so here we have prompts. So if you want to do, read a poem, we have levels all across that you can use. And so actually, for an example, let me do one for those of you that are currently in the learning circle. But what I want to do is I'll do a lesson on synonyms. Let me drag and drop this here. Okay, so there's my prompt as your instructor. I just put a question in there on the lesson synonyms. So share your answer and then provide another synonym that you can think of. And so these are additional prompts you can use to help drive conversation. So the learners are going to be working synchronously and independently on the Learning Upgrade app that we talked about. But then there's also the synchronous and asynchronous group time. And the fun thing here is you'll see that Lori just put her answer in there. And so as the instructor, I can do a thumbs up. I can do a thumbs up for David's wife. And then I can also respond and I can say, great answer. And so you can see the feedback, and everybody else can also provide feedback to each other. And so maybe one of the students might say in our group, I'm still not understanding synonyms. As an instructor, it might be 1 a.m. and I'm not able to respond to that group message. But now that we have 70 plus people in the group, other instructors can jump in. And even though they're students, as we talked about with the learning circle, everybody's an instructor now. Everybody can assist each other, give answers, and provide feedback. So that's a quick upgo on the learning circles. It looks like that's off and running. So it looks like we have quite a few people answering, helping each other out. And then we'll just close out here with the learning management system. And so we talked about getting students onboarded. I just want to quickly show you how to do that for those of you that are brand new to Learning Upgrade, how easy it is. We go to add new student here. So for those of you that want to invite students with a code, we'll do that, generate our code, and then we have it localized. So here we'll work with Dari, and this is going to show students how to self-enroll using a code. Essentially, it says download the app, plug in our class code, and that'll add you to this instructor's class. Our most powerful is if you already know who your students are, you can download a spreadsheet. And so what we'll do here is we'll do upload student information. You can download our template. You can copy and paste hundreds of students into this template, and then you'll just do browse, upload. You can add courses, English and math placement, and then boom, 200 student accounts have been created with their contact information. And that's when you'll go into perform action. You can send message, and then you'll be able to send credentials like we showed on WhatsApp. The next thing you can do on all of these students is they all have report cards. And so we'll be able to send those out. We also have detailed tracking logs. And especially for those of you that are working in an asynchronous environment, we'll be able to pull up full sessions. We can see the courses students are working on, the lessons, every single timestamp and the devices that they're using. So that's at the individual student level. For those of you that have volunteers that might not be credentialed or they're not instructors, but they still want to participate, we have the teacher whiteboard. This is an unlocked version of everything Learning Upgrade offers. They can launch this.
Select your course to get started.
Any of the Learning Upgrade courses. And then the final thing here, so we'll go back, is the reports tab. And then we have detailed reports. We have the dashboard. And here we'll show you classroom session logs, full activity reports. The big ones are on growth. So if you want to track growth across time, any report you can imagine we have, we do follow-up training and webinars just on the reporting. So we're not going to go into the details today. I just wanted to show you kind of what's there and what's available. But for those of you that get started with the pilot, we'll be able to get you set up with a reporting webinar, and then you can ask questions there and we can help you get those dialed in. So with that, I'm going to close out here, go back to the slides briefly. And for the training, so once you request the pilot, today is really step 1. So it's an introduction on the training on Learning Upgrade, how to set up learning circles, how to get started. From there, you'll fill out the pilot form and you'll get your students onboarded. So you'll create their accounts. After that, we'll do a reporting webinar. Although it's all self-explanatory for the self-starters, you'll be able to jump in and do that. And then we'll celebrate student growth. We'll provide you with the training. We'll provide you with documentation on student learning space. So for those of you that might have questions on when, where, bandwidth, connectivity, we'll assist with that. If you need additional training on WhatsApp, I know I went over it quickly today, so feel free to ask questions in our learning circle, or if you need a follow-up Zoom training. In the learning circle, I'll be sharing our shared folders. So it'll have the slides from today. It'll have document calendars. So for those of you that do want to do, I have one lesson plan for each week. Maybe I want to do learning prompts every day. We can take that off your hands as well. We have a ton of screenshots. So that synonym lesson that I showed you for our learning calendar, we can actually provide you with a shared folder for this as well. So again, it's very little effort if you want to hand this off to a volunteer, and then they can just plug and play every single day or every single week, keep the conversations going for the asynchronous time, and then encourage the learners to maximize their learning upgrade time to continue learning in the app. I'll also provide a link to our digital notebook that students can print off or fill out in a browser. And then the learner support, we cover volunteer requirements and the getting started in the LMS. So I know we've covered a lot here on the learning circles, the courses. Final thing, as I talked about at the beginning, for those that join late, it's free to start, affordable to grow. So if there's one thing you take away from today, please fill out the pilot form. Haneen will share it one more time in the chat. Get started with that. You can also scan this QR code, and that'll take you to a pilot form. But the best one is click that link that Haneen has in the chat, and that'll help you get started with Learning Upgrade. So thank you so much for attending. I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody joining the Learning Circle, and don't delete that yet. We'll keep it going. That's where I'm going to share the PDF and a lot of the documentation that we talked about today. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask them in that Learning Circle WhatsApp group, and I will be able to answer that today. No problem at all. You can also send me a direct message on WhatsApp if you prefer, if it's something more based on training or your site. And that is everything for me. I'm going to hand it back over to Bethel. Thank you, everyone, for attending today.
Thank you so much, Drew and Haneen. There is a poll available. If you could take that before you leave. Just note that your certificate for the webinar is going to be emailed to you 24 hours after the webinar ends. And then just waiting for them to take the poll. And then again, thank you, Drew and Haneen. This was great. What a great session. And everyone have a great afternoon. Thanks so much.